Yeah, absolutely. This is really just a quick fire webinar with a company that we're working with at the moment called Cybraics, and we can welcome Pete Nicoletti to this webinar. And it really is just a quick fire Q&A session just to go through, you know, the technology, where it sits and all of that good stuff, with a specific kind of focus around the MSSP space in particular. I'm also joined by my colleague, John Stoddart, who will be joining me with putting some questions to Pete this afternoon.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Let's start. So we're speaking with Pete from Cybraics. We'll start with some easy yes/no questions. Pete will tell you that those are just to get you warmed up. The reality is that Alex is calibrating the polygraph. So let's just carry on. Is your name Pete Nicoletti?
Yes, it is, but only my friends call me Pete, so Alex and John, please call me Peter.
Are you a CISO?
I am. I've been a Chief Information Security Officer for about 15 out of my 30 years. I've done some big, global companies like Hertz Global, right before the implosion when there's no rental cars needed. I used to joke around when I was a CISO, because the average career length as a CISO is about 14 months, and I told my staff, I said, look, let's not get hacked. I really want to be above average. So we managed to keep my career at Hertz for exactly 2 years to the day. So I'm at least above average.
Perfect. Well, that's good to know. And as well as that, you've run MSSPs in the past too.
I have. I started one, and I've run 3 and sold 2. So I know quite a bit about managed security service providers and the technology used, the service levels that are needed, the 24/7 type cadence that's required, the type of people that need to be monitoring. So we've had quite a bit of success in the MSSP space, and now with my new company, we sell, the application that is appropriate for MSSPs to use. So,
right, Alex, you want to?
Yeah, this is just a really interesting one, really. The fact that the platform uses both machine learning, and AI. John's very much an AI man, and I'm very much a sort of machine learning kind of guy. I think the key focus from your perspective is kind of zero-day attack detection and reducing the sort of false positives. The question here really is, John's a fan of the machine learning. I'm elements of detect, behavioral analytics piece. I'm a fan of that kind of, zero-day detection. Who is right in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I hate to admit this and hate to say it, but you're both right. And that really is painful for me to say, because you kind of need what we've discovered after spending $150 million of US taxpayers' money, which is kind of good for you guys because you get the benefit of our taxpayers developing our platform, is that you have to have machine learning define behaviors. You cannot find 0 days, either unique domains or unique attacks, with conventional technology. It's just not possible. Conventional technology, what I mean by that is signature-based, rule-based, reputational-based. All of those types of technologies rely on awareness of the attack and awareness of how it works. When you use machine learning, you're looking for outlier type behaviors that are not specific, but they're specific enough to where it's something a little bit weird. It's the first time a user's gone to a cloud resource. It's the first time, we've ever seen a domain interact with your company. The first time is typically a bad time for that company.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unless you have machine learning that can find that, that's going to be the problem. And there's always the joke about machine learning and artificial intelligence. If it's machine learning, it's probably written in Python. If it's artificial intelligence, it's probably written in PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is a very difficult thing to leverage because of the labeling required. We spent about 2 years and about $10 million in labeling 6 petabytes of data to label it so the artificial intelligence engine could learn from it.
Yeah.
And it was an utter and complete failure. Our company actually broke into 2 camps that battled each other and for results. And we would use the same data sets. And the findings were that artificial intelligence isn't, and machine learning had the findings. And we then shuffled off the artificial intelligence data scientists to work on over the horizon, way out in the future type projects, because it's not practical yet.
But I guess you've got to have a good product roadmap, and if you don't have people looking with a much longer time horizon, then you sell what you have now, but you don't have anything new in 3, 4, 5 years time.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And would it also be the case here, Pete, that this is one of the kind of clear differentiators between Cybraics and other platforms out there that are maybe signature based, that the machine learning piece allows you to detect those zero-day attacks because you're not relying on the kind of traditional signature based mechanisms to identify threats?
Absolutely right, Alex. Damn, I hate saying that. No, you're absolutely correct. Signatures depend on historical information. They depend on someone reporting it or a honeypot seeing it and developing a signature to spot it. So a signature absolutely assumes that you've seen it before. And that's exactly what the hackers know this. So when they develop new code or a malware variant, the first thing they do is run it through VirusTotal to see if any of the 70 or 80 engines out there can determine it based on a signature. Yeah. They'll also run it through the other reputational-based tools to see if it has a bad reputation. And they will absolutely start up a new domain with a new IP address that's never been used before in an attack. So all of the signatures rely on historical knowledge of where the attack's coming from and what is the attack type, because that's how signatures work. So, and it's the same fallacy with threat feeds. So you take, your question, the next step is, how good is a threat feed? Well, it's historical information. It's somebody else that's reported a problem, and now you're seeing that problem. So how good is that? We leverage threat feeds because with our platform, and we use some of that information to enrich our cases. But every single day, we'll see it multiple times where there'll be absolutely no reputational or signature-based information from any other tool. And then flash forward, 2, 3, 4 more weeks, and if this hacker has been prolific, somebody else will have reported it, and we'll see it pop up in the threat feed. And by then, you've been attacked and successfully compromised.
Yeah.
So threat feeds
the lag is just causing
lag.
It's just causing problems. Isn't it?
Yep.
Right. Let's see. We talked about machine learning versus AI. Machine learning needs a lot of data to go and train itself on so that it can spot stuff. What What data lake are you training your ML on?
Well, that's a great question, actually. It's a first good one. No, I'm just kidding around with you guys, having some fun.
It's a good job we got some really hard questions for him, John, coming up, isn't it?
That's all right. I'm rewriting the PowerPoint as he answers.
You know, when we first the platform started as a DARPA program. Here in the United States, DARPA is a defense agency research program. And we spent $98 million of taxpayers' money building a 5 petabyte data lake of unstructured data and unleashing 50 doctor nerds, you know, data scientists, to try to find correlations within the data to spot behavior that terrorists would do, whether it be financial data, whether it be in-ground sensors or whatnot. So that data lake was significantly large. When we pivoted to the company to looking at IT security, we had connections into 3 large companies: ADP, Intel, and another large healthcare provider. 3 of the top 50 companies in the United States. And we took their entire logs for a year. So we had, in that case, we had a 6 petabyte data lake that we would run the analytics for and determine their efficiency. And the key was to say, look, we need a format or a framework to find every type of attack, and then develop an analytic that finds attacks. So what we did is started mapping our attacks to that MITRE ATT and CK framework. And we needed to do that because that's the most detailed framework that shows all the different attack types for the different types of operating systems and routers and whatnot. So we started ticking off analytics that were capable of finding each of those types of attacks. And we've carried that forward now, and now we've got the complete show. We've got the complete coverage. So, and it took a while, and there's new types of attacks every day. So we are either updating analytics on an ongoing basis or even launching new analytics. For example, Microsoft Office 365. There's a number of new use cases that we're seeing because of everybody, working from home and leveraging cloud resources. We're seeing a huge uptick in security use cases where people are abusing Microsoft 365, as well as being compromised by using, home-based computers that have, TikTok loaded and other unauthorized corporate type applications where their VPNs are now a conduit for hackers because they've got authorized and unauthorized users. So we've had to really scramble a little bit to upgrade some of our use cases for bring your own device, BYOD, VPN risks, and Microsoft 365 risks. So it's an ongoing challenge. It's spy versus spy. You got to stay up.
Cool. Great stuff. Okay, so again, MSSP focused here, Pete. So we know that the platform comes in a sort of multi-tenanted version. How well does that work in reality? Is it tried and tested? How kind of resilient is this particular platform for MSSPs?
Well, 2 years ago we had a pretty bad answer for this question, but we've flashed forward 2 years. Our MSSP version came out of a partnership with Raytheon. Raytheon is one of the top 10 MSSPs globally, and a defense, industrial company. And they've got a really big practice. They have, hundreds of people in their managed security service provider space. We got in, we wedged our foot in the door with our detection platform, and we were invited because of our success at the U.S. federal government and the state election commissions in spotting Russian traffic and whatnot, we were invited into their detection bake-off, and it was 42 companies. And our detection platform won that contest, won that bake-off with the most capable detection of all the different types of attacks they threw at it and scans and whatnot. At that point 2 years ago, we were not an MSSP version, but Raytheon said, look, this is the best platform we've seen. It's got the best workflow. It's got the best case creation and et cetera. We need to make this into a tool that we can offer to multiple customers, and they actually co-developed it with us. So we upgraded it with SAML support, so we can support whatever your authentication methods are. We've always been, ever since I got on board and other smart folks, we've always known that we can't commingle customer logs. So we were never commingling. Every customer gets their own environment, and we strictly wall it off that way. But the overarching capability is the ability to monitor multiple customers at once. MSSPs are trying to do the economical thing, use more people or less people to monitor more customers.
Yeah.
So trying to make that efficient by giving them a single glance work screen that can show the security posture of multiple customers with one glance as they page through their customers, they're able to do that. The other thing is our system automatically creates cases. So it's not like a traditional crappy old SIM that you have to look at an alert and as a human determine how important that is to your environment. Our tool takes that process all the way through case creation. So it's not just an alert that has a 40 to 50% false positive rate, and it's not the 30 minutes that it takes or 20 minutes or 10 minutes to create a case. So we eliminate the false positives, and MSSPs love that because their ROI goes way up. We eliminate the 10 minutes that it takes to research an alert to create a case. So they love us for that too. And they like us because we support their role-based, their RBAC. So, the multiple levels that they need to support with multiple customers, whether it's an analyst type login or administrator type login or an auditor type login, we support all that multi-level type access. So, and the pricing is pretty damn good for the tool. It's far more economical than a traditional SIM. It's also SIM as a service. So the MSSP doesn't have to set up anything. They're basically monitoring, checking on the monitoring, and then they get the additional revenue of the remediation side. So we take the M and the D, the managed and the detection of MDR, and take care of all of that hassle and do it better and cheaper than conventional tools. And then the 24/7 MSSP is able to take care of the customer with their tribal knowledge of the customer and log into their firewalls and whatnot.
I mean, I like the ability. The fast setting up of cases is really good, and reducing the false positives, because it means that expensive people, expensive analysts, are actually doing stuff that's important rather than developing a case which might or might not actually work out to be something that needs action taken on it. Yeah.
Well, I said it better, but yes.
I think this question actually is quite a good follow-on, Pete, and I think you've covered most of this already. Actually, the fact that yes, there is that kind of multi-tenanted capability. Yes, you can keep one MSSP's customer data completely separate from another MSSP's customer data and kind of shift through the various screens, you know, in a highly efficient manner. I mean, just one other question, really following on from what you just said about the false positives, if I may. You know, can you give a sort of indicative, you know, percentage or some statistics around, you know, by how much you reduce those false positives by, sort of realistically?
Yeah, if you look at the IBM Ponyman Institute researched this and did a pretty deep study on MSSP efficiency. And MSSP efficiency and SIM is tied to SIM efficiency, Security Event Information Managers. That is traditionally pegging somewhere between 45 and 55% false positives. And that's even with tuning. And the problem with tuning is it's basically the old squelch knob. And if you turn the squelch down too far with tuning your old pathetic correlation rules, you're going to miss something. And if you turn the squelch knob up too high, you're going to get too much noise, and you're going to get what we refer to as the car alarm syndrome. The car alarm syndrome is the first time you buy a, you know, you've got your fancy new Renault Fuego, and you put a car alarm in it. That was my first car after college. I can't believe I bought that thing. And the first time the alarm goes off, you run out at 3 o'clock in the morning. The second time at 3 o'clock in the morning, you run out there. But after the 3,000th time, you don't go out there. So you got to be very careful with spinning the squelch knobs. And that's also one of the biggest challenges with MSSPs and SIM tuning, is that it never ends. The MSSP has to create new correlation rules all the time. As a new attack type comes out, they're having to go back in, and that's why there's bulletins from Splunk and bulletins from QRadar saying, hey, you know, here's a new correlation rule you should consider using. Well, that's baloney, that's nonsense, and that's inefficient. We let the machine learning do all the heavy lifting. So we take that 45, 55% down to 5% on average the first month. Now, the first month, our machine learning analytics are learning a little bit more about that particular environment, and they're going to find all of the company's scanners, for example. So all the, you know, scanning that they do, that drives us nuts. Of course, our tool is going to find scanners because that's typically a precursor to unauthorized behavior. So we have to whitelist that. We also have to whitelist any type of, you know, data backup. Usually that's a pretty interesting, a big blob of data moving through the network.
Yeah, that would set a lot.
We think that's an exfiltration. We don't like exfiltrations. So when we see a big hunk of data moving around, all our alarm bells go off, and then we work with the customer. So during the first month, we take that 5% on average down to about 2%. And then we do, and that's really our goal. We like, you know, our SLA is right around 2%. And that seems to be a pretty fair, you know, level that, you know, you can accept on an ongoing basis. We do have customers that tune it even further, but.
I mean, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? When you consider the fact that, you know, even with all that tuning, you know, these SIM platforms are only going to ever achieve, you know, limited results, you know, whereas Cybraics as a platform can be put in or in, you know, installed, or, you know, and within, you know, straight away you're getting, you know, a huge reduction, 95% reduction in false positives that can then be further tuned down or trimmed down to the sort of 2% level, with a little bit of kind of professional services and just tweaking, like you say, whitelisting, vulnerability scanners and things like that. So that in itself is a pretty amazing statistic.
Yeah, quick question.
Look at the, go ahead, John.
When an MSSP puts Cybraics in, do they run it side by side with, if they're putting it in as a test, do they run it side by side with their previous practice, or do they just sort of put it in for a month or a specific test length and then see how how it compares against how they behaved and operated beforehand. You know, how does that?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, first off, we love a horse race. We love competitive evaluations where we leverage the same data that's going into a traditional sim or a competitive other type of product. We love those head-to-head comparisons because it's really all about findings, and that it's a quite easy way to determine who's the winner, who has the most findings, who has the most information about those findings, and we love those. We not to knock your national AI-based company too bad, but we love a horse race with dark trace. Oh, did I say dark trace, or I don't know. We love to go up against those guys because we just have better results, and we definitely have better results than a sim. You know, I'm fond of saying every large company that's ever been hacked has a sim. And that sim has not given them a defensive capability. It's a great forensic capability. Oh yeah, the logs were there. The evidence of the break-in is here. And that's what, people like me that used to do nothing but incident response, the first question is, hey, do you have the logs? And the answer was, yeah, we have the logs, but we didn't have any tools that were able to discern unauthorized behavior within that log stream. We have all these alerts flying off, but the alerts didn't fly off when the hacker came in, and the hacker turned off logging as one of the first things they do. So, they let it be for that long.
Right. So, data location. Cool. Tell us about where the data is now. What would happen, for a UK-based customer, and potentially, with Brexit coming down the track as well, it's not just, it's not just holding it within the EU, it's holding it within the UK. So,
sure, yeah. So, being in an IT career of 30 years, I've dealt with, and running data centers. We started with server huggers, people that thought they could do a better job of hosting their own compute resources, and of course, bandwidth, connectivity, and heating and cooling, and expandability. All those things started pushing companies to leverage the cloud, where you had somebody else on the hook to deliver a better hosting environment, more resilient, with better power, with better connectivity, with newer and faster computers, and then having it scalable. The same thing goes with the cloud and with log management. It makes no sense to buy expensive appliances and try to scale that to an on-site environment. So when we talk to customers in Europe and the UK, we place their data in that country. We understand something called log sovereignty. It's a polite way of saying, you're a log hugger. You want your logs, to where you can drive past the data center and say, hey, my logs are in there and they're safely ensconced in a data center in my country. And we absolutely will support that. Now, when Brexit happens, and apparently it is happening, right? It's on again, off again, but it's happening.
It's happening.
I'm a fan. The data that's created in whatever country it's created in should go to that country.
Yeah.
And we can do that with the types of systems that we have and the data collector appliances. We can direct wherever that log data needs to go to whichever cloud environment. And then our system can then do an overarching umbrella type look at all the different networks that are out there, and specifically look at issues that are occurring within a network in France, within a network in the UK, within a network in Germany. So multinationals get covered, and they can have their own dedicated data lakes, And of course, we audit to that. So we audit our, we have third-party audits that audit and actually look at the trail of logs and where they're actually located, where they're actually archived, how they're encrypted, how they're treated. That entire log life cycle is audited.
No impact on impact on efficiency and effectiveness, but a location really where the customer wants it to be.
Yeah, the only complaints we get is, the food in the UK is not as good as the rest of Europe, but for our workers, they do complain about that. But that's it. Everything else is the same.
It's actually quite nice to have it described as food. Oops.
That's only because you're coming from Scotland. Anyway,
yeah, exactly.
Question number 9. We've only got one more, I think, after this. Pete, well, there may be a few more actually we've got hidden up our sleeves, but we'll see how we feel about that. So you mentioned earlier on about the detection piece, but obviously within the platform there's no remediation capability. John and myself have been researching other platforms that kind of perform that element, the remediation. And one that we've come across that we really, really do like the look of is Swimlane, for that kind of SOAR capability. How do you feel about sort of, the integration between Cybraics and the likes of Swimlane? Are there a number of, integrations available, and how easy, difficult would it be to maybe integrate with platforms that you don't currently integrate with?
Sure. Yeah. Before I get into, our API and use words that you guys don't understand, let me tell you the 2 use cases that I'm really having fun with you guys. Sorry.
You're not going to do this on the real journal.
This is the real thing.
Oh.
My wife is yelling at me.
This is great. Doing a webinar and there's a wife on the line. Love it.
She's telling me
I don't think I've ever had that before.
I'm being too mean to you guys.
No. We can take it.
Okay.
You wait till he comes over here, Mrs. Nicoletti. And, he'll be regretting all of it.
So first off, you have to have the use cases that are appropriate to deploy a SOAR platform. And there's 2 buckets that I like to put those in. One is response time improvements, and one is quantity. If you're looking to leverage a SOAR platform, their licensing is rather expensive. I think it's kind of expensive. And the competition is knocking it down a little bit. But to pay for a license that does something automated, you need to have 2, in my mind, 2 requirements. You have to be able to say, look, I need response fast. I need it as soon as I detect something, and I have very high assurances that it's something that's serious. I need to kick off an incident response playbook. And that could include a firewall rule, an email gateway upgrade, a go to the endpoint and knock it off the network, various things that protect the environment at large. The other use case is you're doing something in a repetitive way that would drive your humans crazy if they're having to do the same thing every day, and you want to automate that. And in our case, we have a lot of larger companies that are being attacked, and being and setting up just doing firewall rules against 3-day-old domains. They may have 100 of those a day, and doing those firewall rules is a tedious business. And the problem with tedium, especially for security people, is they don't do it for long. They'll end up saying the grass is greener somewhere else, and I won't have this tedious job. So you have to remove the tedium and also look at that responsiveness of an automated rule. Now, there's downside to SOAR platforms as well as the upside. The downside is that if you don't have extremely high assurances that that's something that's a problem, you're going to get what's called an FPB, a false positive block. And a false positive block is a terrible thing because your security is causing some type of an outage and impacting the business processes. So that's the last thing that you want to have to, explain, have the security guys sit in the middle of all the business meetings saying, hey, I wasn't able to process XYZ, thing because your system shut down, users, or shut down a VPN connection to a partner or whatnot. So I like a combination of a SOAR and human platform because I've seen all the movies that let artificial intelligence run the world. Arnold Schwarzenegger,
He's made a career out of that.
We're getting there. So I like the human. I like the human
Man in the loop.
In the loop, in charge of the change control, and certainly automating as much as possible, but having somebody that has an understanding of the network and what could happen if that is executed is something I kind of counsel my customers for. So we integrate with all the major players. Swimlane is a top-notch player. Demisto, Phantom. There's a new one called Tens out there, tens.io, that's kind of cool. But we have an open API that shares the information, and then we like a bidirectional connection too. We like to know what the outcome is. Otherwise, we can't close our case, and we'll show. Now we'll see the risk go down within the case, but we like the full life cycle of having the case closed out with what type of action it was done, or at least have the company's ticketing system be an arbiter of that information. You have to be able to see, you have to be able to troubleshoot things when a SOAR platform goes bad. You have to be able to see, hey, what action did it occur? What did it affect? And how do I reverse out of that if I need to?
Cool. Pricing, Pete.
Pricing, sure.
How does it work?
Well, there's three approaches, and we picked the easiest one because we're dealing with a lot of people in the UK. No, I'm just kidding. At least you do. No, the easy way is
sailing close to the wind.
Yes, we are. There's the competitive guys out there. The hardest one is events per second. You can't ask anyone what their events per second of their network is producing. The other one is per user pricing. We've looked at that, but the variable is so large in the types of companies out there. There's sometimes per user. We've got companies where everybody, we have one company where there's 10,000 janitors. They're a service company, and the janitors log in once in the morning and once in the afternoon, versus knowledge workers where they're logged in all the time. So if you look at the log volume created between a 10,000 company of knowledge workers versus janitors, the per user pricing is terrible because there's somebody's going to be paying too much and the other guy's going to be paying too little.
Yeah.
Because our analytics work on the amount of logs we received, we settled years ago on log volume per month. So it's a super easy number. As our customers come on board, as we're giving them pricing, they usually have some idea of their log volume per month in their siloed tools. Their antivirus tool, they can log in and say, hey, what's my volume per month? They can log into their firewall tool and say, hey, how much log volume? And we start adding those up by direct observation. If we don't have that, we do have a log impact calculator that we use. And that tool looks at the three variables that it takes to get to a log volume per month. It's quantity, it's average log size, and it's an average, event per second over a period of a day. Now, we know the average log size of every type of security tool out there, and our companies always know, well, usually know how many servers they have, how many endpoints they have. So 2 out of the 3 variables we're pretty keen on. The last one is tricky. We have some ranging averages that we use to kind of zero in on what the log impact or the log volume for the month is. And we're typically pretty close because, there's multiple reasons for that. Number one, that's our pricing. And we typically do a 30-day or 60-day evaluation period, so we can actually measure it directly and tell the customer. The other thing that we like to work with the customer on is, since we're log shipping, we're moving logs from multiple locations to a central location. We want to make sure that even after compression and encryption, that we're not impacting the WAN bandwidth. So there's a bit of an architecture discussion where we look directly at the bandwidth in use, its current average utilization, and we really like to be in that single-digit utilization range. 1%, 2%, 3% is what we typically see, because now we've seen this years ago when we didn't do this. When there's an attack, log volume goes up significantly. And the worst thing that can possibly happen is log volume going up, shutting down that WAN link by stuffing it, and not allowing administrative processes to get in to fix whatever the problem is. So if you look at certain types of attacks, and DDoS types of attacks especially, that has occurred in the past. So we architect around that, and we've built in some other tools that prevent that from happening. But it's a great question. It can be very complex, but we try to simplify it, and we just have that monthly pricing. And then if if you go up a little bit, we're kind of flexible. Some companies turn off your license if you exceed what you've purchased, and I think that's kind of rude. We would not do that. We're very flexible. We give you, oh, look at that, I've scored 10 out of 10. All right.
Yeah, well,
What he doesn't know is that there is another question that I have for him.
Go for it.
So Pete, just very quickly, you mentioned Darktrace earlier on, probably the biggest competitor. There are other players out there, Vectra, Extra Hop. There are a number of them. Darktrace has got a pretty good install base in the UK at the moment, as you'd imagine. What is the key differentiator, if you could pinpoint something in terms of what, why are you winning POCs and performing better? What is the sort of key differentiator between Cybraics and, say, Darktrace?
A couple things. The number one is more findings. When we go head to head with Darktrace, we're using, now their technology is fundamentally different. Certainly artificial intelligence and machine learning is what's in common, but they're doing a full packet capture and inspection. That's pretty helpful, and is a technology that we actually support. We have a partnership with Looking Glass, which is the old bro, now the new Zeek, full packet inspection type. So we'll take syslogs from those types of devices, and we'll leverage that information and also leverage it back to where we can do the blocking that Darktrace talks about. So findings is number one. Number two is deployment speed and coverage. Because Darktrace requires pretty expensive, big beefy CapEx type purchases to inspect data flows on fast networks, it's expensive to do, and you have to architect it. It requires power, it requires rack space, it requires change control and span ports and tap ports and inline type dependencies and high availability appliances if you're going to go totally inline. That's crazy. we can deploy in a day. We basically deploy a virtual appliance, software-based appliance, with whatever your virtual computer environment is, whether it's VMware or Microsoft or KVM or Citrix, and you point your logs to that, and we're in business. Within minutes, you're going to get results. 85% of our new turnups with customers will have findings within the first 12 hours that no other tool has seen. Darktrace, the deployment time frame is going to be, days, weeks, months. So you're not going to see any ROI until it's tuned up. The other challenge is that you need to put it everywhere. If you're going to be inspecting networks, you're going to inspect, your perimeter, your north-south traffic. But then to get coverage on east-west, now you're going to have to put in some ports to look at east-west traffic. With us, we're leveraging all of the investments that you've currently made. You made good decisions buying those security tools. We just make them better. So the endpoint technology that you picked, the firewall that you picked, the email gateway that you picked, all of those create logs, and the servers, the Microsoft or Linux servers. That's the information that we leverage. Things that you budgeted for, you have in place, that are probably working pretty good for you. All of them are working at less than 100% efficiency. There's nothing that works at 100% efficiency.
Yeah.
We try to notch that 99.9% efficiency as close to 100 as possible by having findings that span those log sources. All the tools that are out there, they're typically looking at them themselves. They're only looking at the logs that they themselves create, including SIMs. Very rarely do you set up a correlation rule that says, if my DNS reports this, and my syslog reports this, and my endpoint tool reports this, and my firewall reports this, I want to know about it. That's a hard rule to write. That's what our analytics do. They do all that correlation for you between all those different log sources. So CapEx versus OpEx, we're an OpEx tool.
That's pretty clear. Yeah, very, very clear. John, did you have a?
I've got one more thing there that I think you made a really good point at the end there, Pete, because around making the current tools better. Because from a sort of psychological standpoint, you're not telling the customer that he's made a previous bad decision. Actually, through having an umbrella over the top, you're just extracting more value out of decisions and not asking them to reverse expensive decisions that they've previously made.
If you've got an ugly baby, we're going to have that conversation behind your back.
Yeah, Alex, would you like to comment on that?
Well, I was just about to say, that according to this slide, Pete has scored 10 out of 10. Yeah. There have been some slurs against the motherland.
I know. Exactly.
And with that last comment, I think we have to knock him right down.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, Pete, the idea of these sessions from John and I's perspective is that they're informative, first and foremost, but there's some humor in there as well, which you just don't get from this kind of activity anymore. It's just not there. So hopefully whoever watches this will be informed, but will also have a bit of a laugh along the way. I think just on this last slide, if you've got any questions about Cybraics, then you can see that John's email address and my email address are there as well. And if you'd like to speak with Pete or any of the team at Cybraics directly, then just let us know. We can get that set up as well. But Pete, a pleasure as always, sir. Thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to working with some good MSSPs